333, come sit with me. Don't you just love a good rhyme? 333, come sit with me. 333, come sit with me. 333, come sit with me. Hold up, wait a minute. Y'all thought I was finished? I'm the type to count 1 million cash in front line broke. I'm the type to count 1 million cash in front line broke. Hold up, wait a minute. Y'all think all this gangsters move in silence, and my nigga, I don't talk a lot. Real gangsters move in silence, and I don't talk a lot. The power of intention. I just got off the most high. The chat is popping already. It's only been like what, 2 seconds? Let me get in the chat. Let me get in my chat. Let me get in the chat. It was just so perfect just now, though. I was about to get on, and then I got a phone call. But then right now, as soon as I got on, it was 333. Come sit with me. Come sit. Come sit. Take off your shoes, relax your feet, relax yourself, sit, get out a book, I don't know, a glass of wine. It's early, maybe a cup of tea, some water. Put some lemon in your water. Shout out to Mr. Fahad Ibrahim. He reminded me to put some lemon in my water. Although I'm constantly reminding people to put lemon in their water, your girl needed a little reminder. But oh, excuse me. Oh, but I just got off the phone call. And shout out to, the power of intention, knowing and believing. Straight up. I wonder why does it do that? Let me see something. Who's that, babies? Ibrahim, I was just talking about you. I was just saying, shout out to you. I put some lemon in my water. I needed that reminder. Yes. All right. Back up off my face. Sit back. Relax. Kick off your shoes and relax your feet. Party on down to the. You are a powerful creator, and it's in the power of intention. Knowing knowing and believing goes hand in hand, right? But I always say knowing is stronger. You got to know. You got to know it. But you also got to believe it too. It's the same and one and the same, isn't it? Wouldn't you say? And you got to know whatever you want to create, someone out there is going to want to see it. They're waiting for it. They want it. We're all powerful creators. Trust me. You ever drive and just see graffiti or you see some artwork outside and you're like, and it's so beautiful. And you're like just grateful for the whoever drew it, whoever created that piece of artwork. Your eyes needed it. You needed to see it, you know? It's like so life. I'm supposed to go out in a few, and I don't even want to go. I kind of just want to sit. But I just told myself we're going to go outside. We're going to go outside more. We're going to definitely go outside. Then it's like, we are in hibernation season. Don't be forced to go outside if you don't want to go outside. Don't do it. I don't have much time here with you guys, but it was cut so short earlier. It's like we can't do a magical Monday like that. We can't do that. We can't do that. We can't do that. Yeah, baby. You better lay low. You better lay low. Parts of my skin sometimes do look like plastic. It's so weird to me. Like when I'm lotioning my legs and stuff, I'm like, in my arms, I'm like, it looks so shiny. Like it's so like interesting, you know? Oh man. Shout out to all the members in the house. Big up yourselves. You guys are so dope. I was just like, oh my gosh. Members, of course. Why not? Beautiful. Hold up, wait a minute. Y'all thought I was finished?
Learning. But how do you get better at learning? By learning how to learn. How do you really know how to learn? By understanding your learning type. How do you understand your learning type is by understanding the way your mind works. How do you understand your mind works is by studying your mind, right? And what happens when you study your mind? Once you study your mind, you start to understand yourself. You also start to understand your cognitive type, right? Once you know your cognitive type, you can set up the blueprint, right? You understand that there's different ways to teach students. When I was in class, I remember we had this teacher named Mrs. Jones, right? Mrs. Jones would teach me
Mrs.
math. Now,
Jones.
the way she would tell me to get the math problem done, show your work, solve the problem in this particular linear step by step way. Now, me, I wasn't good at doing that. It's not the way my brain works, but I was still able to get the answer, right? I would look at the problem, I would study the pattern that I seen in, and then by studying that pattern, I would come to a conclusion. Now, could I write that down on paper? No, absolutely not. So even though I would write the answer, right, Mrs. Jones, she would get angry. She would be like, "That's not the way I told you to do your work. I want you to show your work, then put the answer." And because I could not show the work, she would mark that a failure. Or worse, they would think that you're cheating. And if they think that you're cheating, then you get in trouble. Now, this made me learn that school was not about me. It was about society, right? It was about who they can turn me into. It's not about how my mind works. It was about them developing my weaknesses and not my strengths. If they so happen to be my strength, then
School is about developing your weaknesses and not your strengths. It's who school is what they want to turn you into, is what society wants to turn you into. What do you think about that comment? I somewhat agree in a way. Let's listen.
I would succeed in the way they told me to do it. If it not been my strength, then I would not succeed in that
Because
class.
if he got the answer right, how is that a failure? He got the answer right. Crazy.
And so that's when I started to change my approach towards life, period. Right? It was another instance to where I remember when, I stopped trusting teachers is when I remember getting in trouble and the teacher asked me to recount events. So I started to recount the events, right? The teacher.
Oh, hold on a second. Fayad, you still in here? Ibrahim, you still in here? That one. Okay. That's what I wanted to do. I wonder.
Said in front of my mother, "Are you calling me a liar?" And I said, "Well, I'm not saying that I'm a liar." You know what I mean? And so basically I said yes. And I got in trouble for that. And then I realized another lesson that people do not want the truth. They want conformity, they want control, they want authority. It has nothing to do with being truthful at all, which means they didn't care if I was truthful. That was the lesson that I learned during that particular class, right? And then I had teachers that did teach me very well, right? And I never knew why I liked this teacher. And it was because they taught differently, right? They taught with different type of illustration, different type of examples, stories, narratives. And so typically when you grow up in a poverty-based society and environment, you have large classroom sizes. So they don't have time to teach in multiple different ways because you can teach one subject in multiple different ways and it will allow a broader audience to understand it. There's this concept that we call general intelligence, that if you teach this general concept in a certain way that everybody will get it, right? But it discounts for the different types of thinkers, the different type of cognitive styles, right? There are some people who work very well within a system. They're very linear in their thinking. They're not skipping process and they're good at memorization and focus. Those are the people who did very good in school. There are other people like myself who will have fast pattern recognition, metacognition, right? Who think in blocks, who might skip steps, right? Who do not think in linear steps. So for us, right? Structure works in the sense as long as it's built around the way our brain works. But it's not work if you're trying to force me into a system. I'm better off looking at this system, recognizing a pattern. I'm very, very fast, but in my own way. And then I'm better at creating my own. But school was not about you creating new systems. School was about taking a particular type of thinker and discarding the rest that were unnecessary for society. Because we always lived in a pattern based society, or I mean, a permission based society. And then social media came around. Social media allowed people to write their own rules, to create their own systems, to see things however they want to. Things that were weaknesses became strength. You might be a student that talk a lot, right? And so I remember when I was in class and I did Upward Bound. It was an extracurricular outside school. And we used to have to write these essays. And I remember the way I would write them. It was the way that I could visualize and see the story. And I always hated the structured storytelling way that the world always wanted you to do it, or school, I should say. Because I'm like, that doesn't sound like me. And you're trying to force, right, my personality and my thinking type to fit inside of these parameters. And so I would write the story the way it best sounded in my mind. And so when I would read the story, I would get an A because it would sound amazing. But then when I handed the story into the teacher, of course, grammatically, it was all sort of incorrect. So therefore, I would not pass. And then I would always think that this was an unfair way, right? because I never wanted to be good at telling a story like everybody else. I only wanted to strengthen my way because when I heard the story, it sounded good. So I knew that even if I got good at that thing, it would not appease me, right? Because I'm always wondering the why. That's just the way my brain works. And so getting into all of this, I say that because we have a society that is stuck on, right, trying to build out certain type of thinkers, and the rest of us never had a platform for our intelligence until social media came around. You're able to create videos based on the way you think videos should be made, the way you think shows should be made, the way you think thumbnails should be made, the way you think information should be presented, right? And so now you're able to have this free ability and creative ability to create whatever you want to build out your own world. And you realize that you started to become successful, not from working within the system, right? But by studying the system. And when you study the system, you start to understand how it worked and what needed to be changed. And so what I've learned that is school is for the poor because rich people don't send them children for public school. Public school are for poor children, right? To specifically work for rich people or people that are system thinkers, right? That's what it was designed for. It was designed for industrial capitalism so that we can take particular minds that have the cognitive style for memorization that fits within this system, right? That can excel within that system, that are good for studying and or learning authority and working for other people. Right. And so this left out a large group of students. So I started to think about it. I said, wait a minute, can you actually fail in school if school is designed to help you improve yourself? Right? Then no. That means that school really, and you really think about it, can only fail you. If you only have one style of teaching, right? And yes, 70% of students get that. 50% of good students get that. What that means is that style of teaching is only good for 50% of students. Doesn't mean the other 50% needs to increase will, increase discipline, go harder, da 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 da. I think that has been the problem for a very long time with the world, is that they've been trying to force, right, everybody to fit inside of square. And when you really get down to it, and you say, wait a minute, what if they just changed the teaching style? What if children are able to learn in different ways, learn the way visual learners will learn the way kinesthetic intelligence learn, interpersonal intelligence, right? There are people who are twice exceptional, who are gifted, right? Fast learners, but they are different in their giftedness. So they learn in different ways. They might need examples. They might need visual aid to go along with it, right? They might learn in conversation, silence, right? They might learn in stories and narratives. And so these are people that can excel when they start working for themselves as entrepreneurs, not people when they're working for other entrepreneurs. This is why some people just yearn and say, man, I feel like I'm not living my purpose. And what you really feel like is that you don't fit inside this space that you're in. And the reason that most people don't succeed is not because they need more discipline and need more willfulness. They just need more understanding of themselves. When you understand the way your brain works, you understand the way your cognition works, then you can just build your life around that. Me as a thought leader, I understood that I was never going to choose between all these different things that I'm interested in to do one thing, even though the world told me one thing, pick, for trying to be a jack of all trades. And I'm like, but my brain is always making connections between multiple different things. And I'm still able to hold it at a high level. So why wouldn't I do that? Right? And so I said, I'm going to be a thought leader specifically because I understood that this is going to be the best way for me to build a life around my cognitive style. Now, this becomes one of the biggest keys that if you learn this, I believe you can start building wealth for your life, that you're closer to wealth than you actually think you are. You may be closer to 1 million than you are at zero. And it's really small tweaks in the way you go about living your life. What I currently did is I built out an AI blueprint. And what I did was I studied myself. I've been studying myself for a very long time, but AI allows me to study myself and get faster feedback than any other system that I've ever dealt with. And it allowed me to really build out a cognitive blueprint for how my mind works, right? When I did this, I was able to take this blueprint and I was able to give this to friends, right? And I'm able to give this to people, co-workers, right? Business partners and things of that nature so they know how my mind works. They know how to present information for me. They know what I prioritize. They know that the way my cognitive style works is that you have to tell me the why before you tell me the what, because my brain won't even be able to process the ability to care about it until you tell me the why. I need blocks of information. You might think I'm not paying attention, but that's only because my brain processes stuff so fast. I'm going to be the type of person that tells you direct. right? And that's because I'm respecting your cognitive style, saying that I think you can learn fast, right? I also collect patterns very fast. So when you tell me things, I probably already understood what you're going to say before you finish the sentence. So if it looks like I'm lacking interest, it's not, is that my brain is already calculating something else based on me already understanding what you mean, right? I need things in bulletin points, summarized for me. I don't need the whole entire story when you're giving me information. And so once I start giving that to right people, they are able to understand the way my mind works. Now it creates a much better flow. I understand how to get myself in flow, right? I understand that sometimes when I'm trying to prepare for stuff, like my brain works really well in chaos, right? Case in point, but when I was going to speak to the president of Uganda, it was a very interesting set of circumstances. We was at his house. We were surrounded by his whole entire administration. You have people that are trying to tell me what to say, what I cannot say, etc. And it was a high pressure situation because I did not know how much time I was going to get. And I'm going to talk about this later on Patreon. But I remember to activate my flow, right? That it doesn't even matter. Let me get into what my best flow is. One of my flow is activated by posture. Stomach in, chest out, head up. When my posture is clear, my brain thinks to get into more confidence. I go into a 6-4-4 breath meditation, right? This allowed me to activate, get clarity of thought, right? I ask myself a question, right? Because inquiry is the best way to get your mind activated. Most of the time, people are thinking about the answer. I'm thinking about the question. Then I think about what is actually important for me to say and not to say. What is the point of this? My brain has to think about high level. So this activates me in that moment to start thinking high level. I never learned any of this from school. I never learned any of this from teachers. I never learned these things. Yet they had the audacity to fail me in class because they didn't know how my mind worked, right? But in that moment, I was able to activate instantly, right? And I was able to make the best out of the situation. So they never studied my cognitive type, yet they're trying to teach me. And that to me just doesn't make any sense. How can you teach somebody that you don't understand? So now you're expecting this child that is adolescent that don't understand themselves yet, because nobody's teaching them about their own cognition, to go in there, right? And then to learn subjects, right? And learn skills, yet you're not teaching them the way that their mind works. See, once you really get into this, you get deep into this, now you know how to, build your own frameworks, build your IP, build your brand around the way your mind works, right? I got it down to a way to where I know the content type that I should make. I know how to activate my brain in an interview fast to get me to deliver flow mode, right? And so I want to be able to do this now for you, for the world, because I believe that school failed us all. In my first book, y'all know I wrote about this, abstract thinking versus technical thinking, right? And so now I've mastered this on another level, and I'm studying this deeper and deeper and deeper as I go, just the cognitive sciences around this. There are other things that I think were not taught in school, but we're not going to get too deep into that. One of them, though, is ADHD, attention hyperdeficit disorder. And the reason I think that this is a bad thing that wasn't taught, that divergence, neurodivergence, right, is because we always taught that people have ADHD. You put people on medicine, but you never actually told them what it was. That is, to me, makes no sense, right? So you're saying that most children have ADHD, but there's no real bulletin for teaching people how it works. Now, one thing I'll tell you about it is that you have a part of the brain that has hypofrontality, right, which is the frontal part of your brain that is particularly there for focus, right? When this is of low stimulation, right, you constantly need stimulation in order for you to be able to focus. So why you think you can focus on your phone so much, right, if you can't focus on regular life? The reason that you can focus on the phone is because it's constantly giving and feeding you stimulation, and you constantly need it. Sort of like an addict that constantly needs to do drugs in order to feel something, right? It's the same way your brain gets when you watch short form content. So therefore, what ends up happening is that you start searching for novelty. Throughout history, human beings always search for novelty, right? But what this does is it activates that particular part of the region of the brain that stimulates dopamine. So your brain is constantly getting this hit of feel goodness. Now, this is not a good thing because it leaves you addicted to these short dopamine pulses instead of being able to activate the executive function of your brain that is focused on long-term thinking. So what it does is it shortens your time span. So now your brain is constantly looking for a hook, looking for something online to make it feel something. So you can focus on that because your brain is stuck scrolling, looking, never satisfied because that small hit that you get is not enough to satisfy your brain. Now, people who can think in long term, focus on long term projects, right? They can have delayed gratification. So therefore, they don't need that constant hit every time, right? They're more so thinking about the hit that they're going to get when the project is complete. So they have a healthier brain function, right? And so you were not taught about this. So therefore, once you're given a social media and you're given these instant gratification things, going out, drinking, smoking, sex, social life, things of that nature, these are all things that give you a quick dopamine hit. right? And so without understanding ADHD, a lot of people are failing to understand their relationship with time because it also makes you time blind. Because you're only focusing and trying to get over stress, anxiety, and feel good, right? You're not thinking about nothing for the next week, nothing for the next month. Your brain forms from an early age. You start being able to go through chronons, which are seconds, increments of time in seconds. As you go into adolescence, you start being able to think of time in minutes. As you go through teenage years, you start thinking of time, right, in hours. And then as you continue to go through young junior years, your brain develops. You're able to think going into, days and weeks and months, right? And most people never get to years. So, when we, an inability to feel the future, the mind cannot organize itself over time. Now, once you understand this about yourself, and you can really understand that, you can understand why you're not getting certain things done, why you're not executing certain. And once you have this understanding, then you can start building a life and habits around that so that you can start winning, right? So it's not that you need more discipline because no matter what you do neurologically, your brain is not going to change, right? Unless, of course, you start fasting and you start getting away from novelty, you get away from comparison, right? You allow your brain to be in a stable manner to where, they call it raw dogging nowadays, where you're going completely without your phone, technology, computers, and all of that. And then it resets your brain and so that you can get back to task focused and task oriented things. So this is why today, if we're in a world to where they're finding more ways to attack your attention than ever, the focus of the future, the asset of the future is cognition, right? If you want to know how to be successful in the future, you're going to need to know your cognitive type. Nobody cares about your resume anymore, right? So now you need to know what type of thinker you are, how to activate yourself, what gets you into long-term thinking. Is your brain one that is focused on fast pattern cognition? Is your brain is one that works best in synthesizing information, grabbing concepts, right? What is your brain good for? And then what you're going to do is you're going to optimize on that. So what's happening now is that there's a new type of cognition that's happening because of AI. So AI allows a new type of cognitive thinking to appear because the time that it takes for a person to have to simulate ideas inside the mind is decreasing because you're able to automatically get that relay feedback from AI. You ask it something, you're able to simulate it within that AI, so you no longer have to simulate judgment in your mind, right? So now you're going into this external systems that we're utilizing so that you can start maximizing your cognition, and you're going to start seeing a change in the planet, and specifically cognitive on how people think. And once it changes globally how people think, how they interact. And here's the thing, this is why you got to be happy if you're in a place that has 5G internet and a place that have access to AI, because countries that don't yet have access to it, these are the ones that's going to lag behind cognitively. Why? Because their brain is not going to go through those changes yet. Now, it's not such a bad thing because in some ways, right, when they finally do become online and they finally do get AI, right, things of that nature, it's going to interact with the way their brain works. And what we want is cognitive diversity. We want different type of thinkers in harmony with each other. Some people work unstructured, some people work structured. Some people work linear, some people work non-linear. Some people need step by step, some people think in chunks, right? Some people are the vision, some people are the execution. And so once we get to a point where people are able to understand their cognitive type, it makes it immensely easier to work with other different people because all you have to do is say, this is the way my mind works. Okay, do you fit, right? And inside this team framework to say, okay, we don't have somebody who thinks like this over here, and that's why we're incomplete. Because most projects stall is because it's a bunch of the same thinkers, right, in a circle together. Most of the time, we get my friends together, and we are visionaries. So, of course, we align on the vision, but we need somebody to do a lot of the executive work, right? And because we live in a time, day, and age where when somebody does the vision, there's a really disrespect for visionaries a lot because there's an expectation for you to also do the execution. And that's not what your brain is best at because the execution often requires a lot of small details. And there's only certain minds that is very rare that can do both at the same time, right? And if school would have taught you this, then you would have known exactly not to go look for a career, right? You would have looked at what works for your mind. But instead, they gave you boxes to check and told you to go live your life based on these boxes. They didn't give you a mind to understand to live your life based on the way your mind works, right? So I developed a whole entire platform on this, and I'm actually going to teach, do a whole challenge on this. And it's the cognitive wealth key. It's basically once you understand the way your mind works, you learn how to build wealth and make money. You learn how to create your brand, create your books, your digital assets, right? You're able to build out your personal brand, right? You're able to understand your communication type, the way you're supposed to lead, the way you think, the way you work in teams. Then you're able to get a cognitive blueprint to where you can literally print it out, right? Study yourself and then give this to others to study to you as well. This will not make your life easier. It will make your life greater, right? Because you don't really need life to become easier. You just need to understand life. When I just came from the gym. And the reason I say that is because no weight actually gets lighter. It never happens. I've never picked up a weight and it got lighter. What happens is I got stronger, right? And as you understand yourself more, basically you get stronger in your understanding. And you realize you don't need the weight to get lighter. You just need to get stronger. So a 20-pound weight is, you may feel light to you, but that is relative to your strength. So life is based on relative to your understanding. So just wanted to share that with y'all on Substack real quick. I had these thoughts while I'm driving to the Uber anyway. That's how I let my thought flow. Y'all have a blessed one.
Such an interesting, I totally agree with what he was saying. I totally agree with what he was saying. It's something you have to go back and take some notes on a little bit also. I will remember to put it in the description. I'm actually going to put it in the description box so you can see it later. The white got so brown. It got so tan.
This video can explain everything.
Oh dear. What's this thing I wanted to listen to? Oh wow, it's 4 o'clock.
Almost impervious to the passage of time. Have you ever observed that there are women who seem almost impervious to the passage of time, as if they carry a special radiance within that outshines their chronological age? This is about something deeper than mere genetics. Something operates in hidden realms beyond what we usually call aging. We are not talking about skincare or surgical interventions. What is meant is a phenomenon that C.G. Jung would have immediately recognized. The state of the soul shapes the expression of the body. What you are about to discover calls into question much of what you may have thought about the connection between inner vitality and outward appearance.
The state of the soul shapes the expression of the body. The state of the soul shapes the expression of the body. The state of the soul shapes the expression of the body. There's a connection between inner vitality and outward appearance. The connection between your inner vitality and your outward appearance.
The secret does not lie in what these women do, but in what they carry within their energy field, an extraordinary spiritual alignment that acts like a shield against the destructive power of time. At the end of this journey, you will understand why some souls shine while others fade, and how this ancient knowledge can also transform your own relationship to aging. The mystery does not begin before the mirror, but with the light that radiates from within. When Jung spoke about the influence of the psyche on outward appearance, he knew that consciousness shapes reality in ways we have almost forgotten today. Some women carry a vibration within them that operates outside the conventional laws of aging. Imagine a woman walking across a crowded room. She does not draw glances by effort or artificial means, but by an indescribable presence that seems to bend the light around her. Her face tells stories and yet appears fresh. Her eyes reveal ancient wisdom and at the same time sparkle with childlike curiosity. This is the archetype of radiant femininity, the woman whose soul keeps her young. Jung described this phenomenon as the process of individuation, the union of the conscious and unconscious that leads to psychic wholeness. Women who walk this path often notice that their outward appearance changes along with their inner metamorphosis. They embody what Jung called the eternal aspect of the feminine, a timeless essence that transcends biological aging. Within them lives what Jung called the anima mundi, the world soul that invisibly connects all living beings. They have learned to attune themselves to this cosmic rhythm. Their personal story recedes behind something greater, timeless. In doing so, they confirm what mystics have always known. Consciousness shapes time, and time shapes the body that carries this consciousness. These women possess a shared ability. They transform suffering into wisdom without becoming bitter. While others are weighed down by disappointment, they turn pain into light. Think of a woman who has suffered many losses and yet carries an inexplicable softness in her face. She has not avoided life, but has practiced what Jung called active imagination, the ability to work creatively and healingly with unconscious contents. In this way, she prevents inner poisons, which would otherwise lead to premature aging, from taking root in her system. The ancient Greeks distinguished between chronos and kairos. Chronos is the linear, mechanical time to which most submit. Kairos, on the other hand, is sacred time, the eternal moment in which transformation becomes possible. Women who appear mysteriously young live primarily in kairos. Chronos touches them only when necessary, but never defines their essence. The beginning of this path lies in what Jung called the encounter with the shadow, those parts within us that we would rather hide. Many people waste enormous energy suppressing these dark aspects. This eventually shows in the face, in posture, in radiance. The radiant woman has made peace with her shadow, integrated it instead of fighting it. From this integration arises what the ancient alchemists called the philosopher's stone, a state of inner wholeness that radiates outward. When inner conflicts cease to constantly drain life energy, that power is freed for regeneration and renewal. The face relaxes into its natural beauty. The eyes become clear, free from the mists of inner battles. The posture straightens with genuine, not feigned, self-confidence. Yet something deeper happens here, something directly connected with the nature of time itself. Jung understood that the psyche operates according to its own laws of time. He called this synchronicity, meaningful coincidences pointing to a reality beyond linear causality. Women who embody this extraordinary spiritual quality seem to live partly outside ordinary time. They have developed what Jung called the observing self, a part of consciousness that can distance itself from everyday drama while remaining fully engaged. This inner attitude allows them to observe their own aging process without identifying with it. A paradoxical shield arises precisely because they consciously perceive aging. It slows down. They age as participants, not as victims. Linked to this is what Jung called the transcendent function, the bridge between the conscious and unconscious that makes true transformation possible. This psychological achievement creates a kind of temporal bubble around them in which the usual laws of aging operate differently. Yes, they age, but in the rhythm of their soul's development, not according to the relentless ticking of the clock. Perhaps you yourself have met women with a timeless radiance that makes you question their true age. They move with a dignity born of inner work. Their soul wounds have transformed into strength rather than exhaustion. Their laughter comes from deep layers. Their silence carries peace. Their presence awakens awe at hidden mysteries. Science is only now beginning to understand what Jung sensed decades ago. Research in epigenetics shows that emotions directly influence how genes are activated. Chronic stress accelerates cellular aging. States of inner calm and joy, on the other hand, promote regeneration. Even telomeres, the protective end caps of our chromosomes, biological markers of aging, respond sensitively to our inner state. What Jung called the collective unconscious grants these women access to an inexhaustible source of renewal. They tap into archetypal energies that femininity has carried for millennia. This connection creates something akin to biological grace. Cellular regeneration proceeds faster. The body remains youthful. Women in vital contact with the self, the archetype of wholeness and meaning, show measurable differences. Their cortisol remains balanced, inflammation levels stable, cellular repair mechanisms function optimally. The peace of the soul preserves the youth of the body. This is not fantasy, but the recognition of a deep connection between consciousness and physicality, which Jung spent his life exploring. He recognized that psyche and body are not separate domains, but two sides of a whole, and that a change in one always affects the other. Jung also spoke of the religious function of the psyche. By this, he did not mean institutional religion, but the sense of the sacred that can permeate daily life. Women who cultivate this sense treat their body as the temple of consciousness. This reverence protects them even on a level we might today call quantum-like. The radiant woman has also learned what Jung called the art of letting die, releasing what no longer serves without clinging to outdated patterns. She knows that each stage of life requires an inner death and rebirth, and passes through these transitions with dignity rather than resistance. While others are burdened by emotional weight, she practices conscious release. She preserves only what fosters the growth of her soul. Everything else she leaves behind before it engraves itself as lines and shadows on her face. This letting go also extends to external expectations and social roles. Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear in everyday life. Those who identify too strongly with it fall into rigid patterns. The radiant woman wears her masks lightly, like clothing adapted to the season. In her psyche operates what Jung called the autonomous complex of the eternal feminine, an inner structure that works independently of conscious will, but always serves the highest growth. This inner principle protects her from becoming rigid when women lose their cyclical, regenerative nature and align themselves only with linear time. Through the transcendent function, she has found a third way. Beyond the opposites of youth and age, beauty and decay, meaning and meaninglessness. In her presence one feels, this woman is friends with time. She does not fight against it. She dances with it. Yes, a field arises in which others sense how the weight of time becomes lighter for a moment. Jung would have recognized in her the archetype of the wise woman, not as an old crone, but as a living embodiment of timeless wisdom. These women have deepened their access to the collective unconscious, to the eternal feminine that is constantly renewing itself. The unconscious continually balances out the rigidity of the ego through dreams, perceptions, and intuitions. In this way, they remain in harmony with their true developmental path and avoid the spiritual stagnation that otherwise accelerates aging. The extraordinary spiritual quality of these women is ultimately the harmonious integration of many of Jung's ideas. They have achieved what Jung called the union of opposites, the balance of masculine and feminine energies within themselves, the integration of light and shadow, the acceptance of strength and vulnerability. This inner marriage acts like psychological alchemy, transforming everything it touches. Their faces become living mandalas, symbols of inner wholeness, which Jung understood as the natural expression of the self. The symmetry of their features is not the result of genetic fortune, but of a balance achieved through conscious inner work. The light in their eyes reflects the integration of all parts of the personality into a harmonious whole. This quality is most clearly shown in their approach to suffering. Where others develop lasting marks of bitterness from pain, these women have cultivated an attitude that Jung called a religious approach to psychic material. They know that every wound carries the seed of healing. Every crisis contains the potential for greater awareness. The radiant woman has achieved what Jung called differentiated feeling, the ability to distinguish between emotions that foster growth and those that only continue old patterns of suffering. She can feel deeply without losing herself. She can cry fully without drowning. She can be truly angry without overloading her system with poison. This emotional maturity protects her from inflammatory reactions in the body that research directly links to accelerated aging. This does not mean that she avoids suffering or pretends it does not exist. Rather, she has developed the ability to endure the tension of opposites, as Jung called it, and to remain present in difficult experiences without immediately fleeing or grasping for quick solutions. In this way, she prevents the inner fragmentation that accelerates the aging process. Her nervous system remains regulated even under pressure, preserving what researchers today call heart rate coherence, a state in which breathing, heartbeat, and emotions are in harmony. This coherence profoundly influences hormones, the immune system, and cellular regeneration. The peace of the soul becomes medicine for the body. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about these women is their relationship to the future. While others cling to youth or fear time, they have developed what Jung called prospective thinking, the ability to recognize the potential for growth in every moment. They live in becoming, not in nostalgia. This awareness creates a field of possibilities. They attract experiences and relationships that support their development, as if their clear intention for growth calls the right circumstances into being. Jung would have called this synchronicity in action. Their faces reflect this openness to the future. Instead of rigid features that speak of resignation, they bear fluid expressions, faces that allow infinite expressiveness, eyes full of curiosity about what life has yet to reveal. Jung's idea of the unus mundus, the unity of all reality, is reflected in their being. They have achieved what the alchemists called the union of microcosm and macrocosm, a personal transformation so aligned with cosmic principles that their own aging process unfolds in harmony with the eternal cycles of nature. The spiritual quality they embody ultimately refers not only to their relationship with themselves, but also to the invisible forces that Jung called archetypes. The tabs you open here
This is such a great listen.
work with these universal patterns of human experience. From them they draw strength and renewal. In their presence, one feels this archetypal connection. They seem to carry more within them than their individual lives could explain, as if they had access to the wisdom of all women who walked similar paths before them. This collective feminine grants them a timeless authority that has nothing to do with age. Their laughter carries echoes of the eternal feminine, which Jung recognized as one of the fundamental ordering structures of the psyche. When they speak, one hears not only their voice, but something greater that speaks through them, an expression of the divine feminine using their personality as a vessel. This permeability requires what Jung called a permeable ego, strong enough to preserve identity and at the same time open to the transpersonal, a balance that demands years of inner work. Once achieved, these women radiate a clarity that transcends personal boundaries. Thus arises what Jung called the conjunctio, the mystical union of conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine, temporal and eternal. From this inner union grows what the alchemists called the child of the wise, a renewed self that carries both the wisdom of experience and the freshness of new beginnings. The face becomes a living testimony of this inner harmony. Women who embody this extraordinary spiritual quality have learned what Jung called a symbolic life, an existence in which every experience means more than is visible at first glance. This
Every experience means more. than is visible at first glance. Thanks for sitting with me, guys. I know I wasn't in the chat today like that. I was, you know, every experience means more than is visible at first glance. And you know it's true. You know it's true. You know it's true. You know it's true. Well, 333. Wow, it's now 424. Thanks for sitting with me.